What if the basilisk, the chimera, the griffin, those half-nightmare creatures of old weren't just myths, but genetic experiments, stitched together by hands that knew more about life's code than we think possible? I was in Greece when the thought first hit me, standing among marble ruins while pigeons strutted on toppled columns. A guide recited the old tales. The chimera with lion's body, goat's head, serpent tail. The basilisk whose gaze killed. Stories to frighten children, he said. But my grandmother back home used to warn us with stories too, of horned serpents in rivers, of thunderbirds that split the sky. They weren't children's tales. They were memories disguised as warnings. Why should Europe's monsters be any different? Ancient art is full of these creatures, chimeras carved on vases, basilisks scratched into bestiaries, sphinx crouching by tombs, always with detail too sharp, too consistent, to be random invention. If they were merely symbolic, why depict them with such anatomical precision? Maybe the artists weren't imagining. Maybe they were recording. Consider the possibility. A forgotten age when knowledge of DNA, or its precursor, existed in fragments, perhaps passed down from beings who came from the stars, or rediscovered by human genius we underestimate. If so, they might have experimented with mixing life forms, blending lion and goat, snake and bird. The results? Creatures unstable, dangerous, or hybrids not meant to last, but to demonstrate power or to guard secrets. From a native perspective, this sits uneasily close to familiar stories. Elders tell of beings who crossed boundaries, mixing forms. Some became sacred teachers, others were mistakes, punished by the Creator. The warning is always the same. Respect the balance, or pay for crossing it. The chimera myths carry the same warning. They're not fairy tales. They're memories of what happens when you play with life's fire. And the basilisk, described as hatched from a serpent's egg warmed by a rooster, a creature so wrong that even its gaze killed. That sounds less like a fairy tale and more like a failed experiment in unstable hybrid radiating poison. Dangerous even to approach. People remembered and passed the story as, beware. Here's the unsettling thought. What if these beings didn't all die out? What if some lived long enough to influence culture? A griffin's bones mistaken for dinosaur fossils. A chimera hunted until extinction. A basilisk remembered only as plague or disease. Over time, their bodies vanished, but their shadows remained in legend. Imagine walking through a laboratory in Crete 4,000 years ago. Torches burn. In pens, half-born creatures shift, some gasping, some roaring. Priests in robes whisper chants. But the chants mask formulous recipes to mix and splice. Two villagers outside, the sounds and shadows become myths of monsters. Two rulers, the hybrids are weapons, guardians, or symbols of authority. The line between science and magic blurs until both collapse. From the perspective of my people, such stories remind us that knowledge can wound. Just because you can, an elder once told me, doesn't mean you should. If basilisks and chimeras were genetic experiments of old, then their legends are not fantasies, but ethical warnings, carried forward so we don't forget what happens when curiosity forgets compassion. If true, it means humanity has already danced with biotechnology once, before and chose to bury it in myth when it burned too hot. The monsters we call imagination may be the echoes of experiments abandoned, whispering still in stone and story. We lived. We were real. Remember us, and be careful.